What's up with the youth climate strike movement? In the fight for climate justice, many young people feel that they are not heard by decision makers and that the pace of climate action does not meet the urgency of the crisis. And so, across Europe and globally, they stepped outside traditional participation structures to make their voices heard through civil disobedience. The youth climate strike movement became politically visible especially in 2019 and evolved over time by organizing global coordinated actions. In March 2019, the first global strike was organized. Coinciding with the European Parliament elections, the second global strike took place in May 2019. 450 young Europeans from 37 different countries met on the summer meeting in Lausanne, Europe, SMILE, in August 2019. They formulated their demands in the Lausanne Declaration. 1. Keep the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. 2. Ensure climate justice and equity. 3. Listen to the best united science currently available. The third global strike happened in September 2019, followed by a week of action. Coinciding with the UN climate conference COP25, the fourth global strike took place in November 2019. In September 2020, the fifth global strike was organized after COVID-19 came over the world. Due to COVID-19, the sixth global strike happened online in March 2021. But who are the protesters? To get a better understanding who these protesters are, let's look at them in more detail. Young climate protesters in Europe are mostly young women. Nearly 72% amongst 14 to 19-year-olds in the protests of September 2019 were female. There are quite interesting differences visible. In Warsaw, nearly 80% of the protesters were between 14 to 25 years old. In Budapest, around 65%. In Vienna, more than 40%, in Berlin, around 25%, and in Stockholm, just around 15%. A further demographic trend relates to the educational background of the strikers' families. At the March strikes in 2019, more than 70% of 14 to 19-year-olds reported that at least one of their parents had a university degree. Young people from disadvantaged backgrounds are underrepresented in the movement and need further support to get engaged. Besides all characteristics, the protesters have one thing in common. They demand a voice in the debates on climate, which already affects their lives today and will be affecting it even more in the future. So far, all their actions remained largely outside the international climate governance, excluded from the structured participation initiatives and from the decision-making around green and just transition. But they did not give up. They continued peaceful civil disobedience like school strikes or protests as a form of disruptive political dissent, challenging power hierarchies. Young climate strikers have slowly carved the space for youth demands on this important global agenda, taking down political barriers. What have they achieved so far? For example, some young people have taken governments to court for infringement of their rights. The Fridays for Future European Citizens initiative has put climate justice on the political agenda in the European Union. The voice of the movement is getting stronger and stronger. Is there a response by European decision-makers to their voice? Many community initiatives of young people were supported by youth work through methods of non-formal education, social inquiry, active citizenship, and participation. Sustainable Green Europe is already part of the EU youth goals. The Council of Europe initiatives on climate justice and democracy and on greening the youth sector are also setting policy standards and arenas for cooperation in youth policy in the member states. Yet the climate strike movement in Europe remains largely outside structured participation. To bring climate activists closer to the policy level, youth participation forums need to reach out to their climate movement and bring their opinions on board. So, how can you support and bring young climate protesters to the decision-making table? Get involved in understanding the movement and read more about what's up with the youth climate strike movement here.